Hello, everybody. I'm John Sweeting, Chief Customer Officer with ARIN, and I'm going to give you an update on our IRR deployment that actually happened 6 days ago, last Wednesday. And I do not have controls to move the slides.
Next slide will say it. If you say it, they'll move it.
Next slide. Okay, so the Internet Routing Registry project overview. We started this project back in second quarter of 2019, and the team's been working diligently throughout that time. There was community stakeholder involvement. We had at least 3 meetings that included the stakeholders, providing us feedback and guidance on the requirements and the development as it went along. It was deployed on 10 June, last Wednesday. And there are now 2 processes for creating objects in the ARIN IRR. There is the IRR email, which is using existing email template processor. And then there is the new IRR online using ARIN Online. Next slide. So the update process, we have an IRR data migration that happened. And what that did, that created authorized, validated data and non-auth, which is objects that we could not validate. We have creation of new services for validated IRR entries within ARIN, and also the integration of the IRR into ARIN Online with the development of a user interface in ARIN Online for creating and editing new IRR objects. Next slide. So during the migration, what happens is all existing objects were migrated into one of 2 data sets. ARIN, these are the objects which are validated as meeting ARIN's requirements, and then ARIN non-auth, which are unvalidated objects. Some of the criteria used to validate objects as ARIN were they have to be under an RSA, and they also had to be being maintained by a maintainer that was associated with the org ID. So we've had a few issues with people that have had more than one org ID, and they created a maintainer with one of their org IDs, and then they created objects for all their org IDs with that maintainer. Those objects would not meet the criteria to be validated and put into the ARIN data set. They would come up and be ARIN non-auth during the migration. Validation included the organization is authorized to create the record and also verify that it's under an LRSA or RSA. Next slide, please. So the migration process runs multiple times per day to move objects created or updated into the IRR email to the new database. So it started out, I think the first day we were at once every 24 hours. We had some input feedback on that, and we changed it to once every 4 hours until recently on Monday, we changed it again to where it updates every 15 minutes. But due to some other processes, it takes about 30 minutes for you to see the updates once you submit them. Validated objects will be moved to the ARIN data set, and the unvalidated objects get moved to the ARIN non-auth during the migration. No new maintainers. So this is an important one. No new maintainers are accepted in the IRR email system. So any new users that come in and want to start entering objects into the ARIN Internet Routing Registry will have to do that through the ARIN Online portion process. I'm going to read a couple of stats we have right now. We took a reading on this. Orgs that are using the IRR online system, and this is it's just been out there 6 days. We have 168 organizations that are already using the ARIN Online IRR. We had about 20 organizations that have transitioned from the IRR email to the IRR online. So that tells us that there's about 148 to 150 brand new users using the IRR and creating their own objects. A lot of those have been ISPs, most likely ISPs that were creating objects for their customers that had space directly from ARIN. Those ISPs have been asking their customers to go in and create those objects now so that they are no longer non-off, but they end up in the ARIN data set. And one more statistic, we have a total in the IRR online objects, 1,079, of which 70% are route, 9% are route 6, 7% are OTNUM, 10% AS set, 5% route set. Next slide, please. Okay, so the initial deployment for the authenticated IR objects. Users can now create, update, and delete the following object types via ARIN Online. So we went with a limited limited set of object types. This was with input from stakeholders and other people in the community as well as internally to make sure that we got the first deployment would put out there and allow those object types most used in the online system, which is route, route 6, OTNUM, AS set, and route set. Another important point, the existing users can still continue using the IR email interface. So anybody that had a maintainer prior to last Wednesday, June 10th, 2020, can continue to submit their templates to ARIN the same way they always have. And even if they have, if they ended up with some of their objects being labeled as non-auth, the source for submitting all templates is always going to be ARIN. We didn't want to change that. We had feedback that that should always stay the same so we didn't break anybody's automation. It did cause a bit of confusion, especially since we weren't updating things, the objects for over 24 hours. People got confused and were trying to delete an object and they submitted it to ARIN. They didn't see anything. They submitted it to ARIN non-auth. They got an error. But we realized that, hey, submitting it to ARIN actually did work. And now we're going to be doing that update to where you'll see that within 30 minutes. Only IR objects created in ARIN Online can be edited in ARIN Online. So there's a very important warning. When you go into ARIN Online, if you're an existing IR email template user, if you go into ARIN Online and you attempt to create or delete an object, you're going to get this big warning that comes up that you will have to accept, that tells you once you accept that, you will no longer be able to submit templates. So if you want to start using ARIN Online, you have to be very careful. And anybody you have as a routing POC, you need to make sure they understand what your intentions are. You know, we understand that the larger users really need an API, and that is our next big part of the IR project, is to make sure we have this API in place by the end of the year. So we imagine a lot of the larger, heavier users will continue submitting the templates throughout the next 6 months, and then hopefully once we get that API in place, we can work with the community to make sure everybody can move over to the new system. Next slide. So some important notes about the IRR, and I might have covered some of these already, which I have the first one. Existing users who continue using the IRR email interface must only use the IRR email interface. I've covered that pretty well, so we'll move on to the next. So when you're submitting objects using the IRR email interface, users must use ARIN as the source. Covered that, but once again, ARIN as the source. Even if the object is tagged as ARIN non-auth, the source for a template would be ARIN. When the first IRR transaction is made via ARIN Online, access to the IRR email will be removed. We will have some tolerance for this. If this happens by mistake and it's creating issues, as long as we're notified in, as long as it's not, a month later or, 6 months later, and there hasn't been that many transactions completed online, we will work to help fix that for anyone that has mistakenly checked off on that big red warning that sign that they get before they can actually create an object or delete an object through ARIN Online. So once again, we will be absolutely working with the community. We're not here to cause pain. We're here to make things work better. And existing users, okay, there's the big warning message. Again, you've got to acknowledge the warning message before you're allowed to continue an ARIN Online. So again, you're going to get a big red warning. It's going to say, hey, you sure you want to do this? And then you have to take the effort to check that box before you continue. Next slide. So differences in service between the authenticated and unauthenticated. So unauthenticated IR objects can only be modified using email templates. No new maintainers will be added to the email template system. So we also learned, I have that on the next slide. I won't cover it here. Authenticated IR objects, existing maintainers can continue to use email templates. ARIN Online can be used by existing maintainers, new maintainers, and both the authenticated and unauthenticated will be published via FTP and NRTM. Next slide. So for the near real-time mirroring, ARIN now offers 2 NRTM streams using existing systems. There is the ARIN, which is the validated IRR data, and there's the ARIN non-auth, which is the unvalidated IRR data. So you have to be pulling both those streams. Current users were notified of the need to make configuration changes to pull from both of these streams to continue receiving all ARIN IRR data. And the existing ARIN NRTM stream, the serial number had to be reset upon deployment. Everyone was advised of that. I don't believe we haven't seen a lot of issues with that. So I believe we did a pretty good job at getting it out there. Thanks to a lot of people, Job Snyders and a bunch of other people that are out there that helped us spread that word to make sure everybody got the word. And so all the organizations realized that they had to reseed as well and use the new serial numbers. Next slide. For the FTP, ARIN now offers 2 FTP sources, ARIN and ARIN non-auth. Current FTP users needed to update their configurations to pull from both ARIN non-auth and ARIN sources. Next slide. Future IRR functionality. So as I already pointed out, our next major development for the new IRR is the creation of an application programming interface to manage the IRR records, which will be deployed by the end of year 2020. And IRR development is scheduled. We have a dedicated team that is going to continue to be dedicated. We're already have made some tweaks based on input from the community, and we have some ACSPs that we're working on, and we also have a lot of suggestions from the team as well as from the stakeholders on things that we need to continue working on. So if you have noticed anything that you would like to see, please submit an ACSP, which is the suggestion program, ARIN's suggestion program. And next slide, please. I also want to say, besides the suggestion program, you can also submit that through our feedback button as well as through our service issues button. So feedback, here's some of the things that happened. We had, why are my objects considered non-auth? And the big one was we had a little over 2,000 records that they weren't covered by a registration services agreement. And we found out through looking at it that some of it was because of what I said of one large company or a couple large companies having multiple organizations and having a maintainer getting a maintainer under one org ID and then using it for all their org IDs. Anything that any org ID that maintainer was not associated with would be considered non-auth. The fix for that is to get to actually come in and ask us for a maintainer ID. Depending on the size of the organization or everything, we will work with you to fix that issue. The issue with not having a registration services agreement is to get a registration services agreement. Once you get an RSA, once you sign an RSA, your objects will, you'll be able to then create authenticated, validated objects, but you won't be able to delete the non-auth, but we will do that for you once you have created your validated objects. Then you can do an Ask ARIN ticket, submit an Ask ARIN ticket, and we will remove those non-auth objects out of the data set. So the other thing was the updates are not fast enough. So we've now corrected that and made changes to where changes will be visible approximately every 30 minutes. There's a couple of 15-minute runs in there that make it to where it could end up being faster than 30 minutes, but at the most it'll be 30 minutes. Next slide, please. All right, that's what I have for the new IRR that has been deployed. And I just want to do a shout out to the team and the stakeholders and everybody else out there in the community that provided input, because I think we're seeing great results from this already.
Yes, thumbs up to the team. I know this has been a long time ask of several community members. Throw it open to questions. I see 2 in our Q&A. 3 now. Beverly?
Yes. First question from Owen DeLong, Farsight Security, ARIN AC. Not wild about the one-way gate to ARIN Online. It's a lot easier to code for email interface, but humans will likely want the ARIN Online interface. Having to make that decision one way on a per org basis is far from ideal.
I'll take that question, actually. So as people are aware, and as John just covered, it takes resources to do the development, to build a new IRR system, to do the API, which we're now doing. And all of these resources cost money. Realistically, we're gated at how fast we can do that and what capabilities we can put in. Now, these services are serving a lot of legacy holders who are paying, in many cases, a legacy holder who has no relationship with ARIN is paying nothing. And so to the extent that we are still providing services, it would be good if we had more of the users of ARIN services actually with an RSA with ARIN, because that would help speed things along. Until then, we are gated, and so there's a period of time now where there is no API, and your access is entirely based on either using the old template system or using ARIN Online. We will catch up. We'll provide an API, and for folks who don't want to have that disconnect, just wait, continue to use the templates. We'll get you an API. As for whether the templates are going to be around forever, that's a different matter. Again, it's a question of maintaining resources for a very old system for a lot of folks who right now aren't ARIN customers.
Okay, thank you, John. Looks like we have a few questions queuing up here, so go ahead, Beverly.
I'm so sorry. Ross Javar from from Atlantic Metro looks like, thanks for implementing this. I'm looking forward to the API. Why can we not edit objects imported from email? I had to delete and recreate all of my objects in order to edit them. Also, is there a plan to eventually retire the email system?
And I'll take this one as well. It's a very similar question. We have two distinct IRR systems right now. The prior legacy one, which we've covered in detail, and a brand new system running in parallel. So really, there was no way to provide realistic translation between the two. We built a new system, and for folks who have moved over to it, that's great. We'll get you an API ASAP. But trying to import that back and make it compatible with the email templates was a lift that would have been far too much work compared to the path we want to go for our systems going forward.
Okay.
Next, please.
Next question, Kevin Bloomberg, The Wire. Please include a feature roadmap and change log on the website. Very much look forward to the new IRR.
Thank you for that comment. Next.
Anthony De La Cruz, the updates in 1530, is that both for NTRM and FTP?
He also says, thanks to John Worley for catching up with some questions before launch.
That was my second half.
John Sweeting, did you want to address that?
I'd like to call on Mark Costers because I don't want, there's been a lot of discussions and a lot of changes since we deployed it. So I'd like Mark to answer that. I think he's on and he can have it.
Yep, he should be. We'll just, Mark, if you can unmute him.
Yep, I'll be happy to answer that question. So NRTM is available on all the public-facing nodes, and you should be able to capture that for both ARIN, the sources for ARIN and ARIN non-auth. So they're both available, and both of them will get updates within 30 minutes of the change that was made with the template processing system. The FTP dumps are made once a day. And this is customary to what the old system had done. So the FTP dumps were made once a day in the morning, and they continue to do so. So that's kind of where things stand at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that. Why don't we we have a raised hand. Why don't we switch it up here a bit?
Yep, no problem. Andrew Dull, you should be able to talk now.
Okay, here I am. So thanks a lot for this. Andrew Dull, ARIN AC, 8 Continents Networks. I'm looking forward to this. So this may be more of a help desk question rather than a feature functionality question, but I figured that other people are also probably in this same situation where you have both records that would exist under your own organization and then records for which you have done proxy records for customers for that are outside of your organization. Obviously, for the outside the organization records, to get authorized records for those, they'd have to come through ARIN Online in the future. But until that happens, and given that there's this one-way gate, if you wanted to, say, abandon those non-auth records and allow them to continue to exist for now, but yet create auth records via ARIN Online, what's the appropriate way to do so given the gate?
Which staff would like to take that?
Yeah, that one I'm going to have to refer to Mark. Mark, is it possible for us to allow someone to start creating records, which would be in the auth stream, and somehow still have the prior ones being omitted in non-auth, the ones from the template system?
Okay.
I can go ahead, Mark.
So there's two things, and I'll let Sweeting actually talk more about this as well. So one of the things that we did have was we sort of anticipated this, Andrew, in terms of the sort of proxy registrations. So we created this thing called a routing contact within ARIN Online. We did that earlier this past year, and one of the things that allows you to do as a routing contact for that org, you can then make changes directly once that record's actually created, once you've actually become a routing POC for that particular org, and it will be in the authorized stream. So for those who are in ARIN non-auth, they are where they are, and they continue to be populated as they are right now. So, and that goes on without change.
If you go through the gate, you don't lose the non-auth records.
So when you go through the gate, you do not lose the non-auth records as such, because they weren't in the authorized stream anyhow. The only ones that go through the gate are the ones that are in the authorized stream. So those are the records that you had previously put in that were matched. The maintainer matched your organization. And then we said, well, those resources match your organization. So therefore you're authorized, and they can be used either as a template, or once you pass through the gate, then they're used through the web interface.
Yeah, so I think the last part of that is, as I think I mentioned, the non-auth objects will stay there. They will be there until you open up an Ask ARIN ticket and ask us to remove it for you. We've tested this. We have seen that we made an ARIN validated object and left it as non-auth. And when you do the who is on the when you query the ARIN RR, both of those objects come up. They both show. You'll have an ARIN, a source of ARIN, and a source of ARIN non-auth. Both objects will remain there, and they will be there until you ask us to remove the non-auth.
Okay, Andrew, does that address your issues?
Yeah, I think it sounds like the functionality is there for people to move forward in this way, and create auth records and let the non-auth records stay for until other orgs, the other orgs, subservient orgs actually create the auth records. So thank you. Great work, guys.
Okay, we're a little long on the presentation from a time perspective. We're a little ahead on the day, so it kind of works out, but we're gonna just close off here. So let's close out the Q&A, but if you do want to get in line, either raise your hand or put a Q&A in. The queue will be closing magically in 30 seconds, please. Thank you. Go ahead, Beverly.
Question. I have a question from Charlie Liu. What would the relationship between ARIN, IRR, and RADB?
John Sweeting or John Kern?
Let John Curran. It's
No,
political.
I'll handle that. So RADB is a separate service that Merit operates. It's the RADB project. They indicated that the RADB has been updated to reflect ARIN's now 2 streams, so that folks using RADB should still see ARIN's records as before. So there's no change per se. They did have to make. There's no change in the relationship. They did have to make a change for their mirrors. And any other organization, for that matter, that has been mirroring IRR data from ARIN, obviously that data is now in 2 streams. If you're mirroring our data, you're going to have to make that update.
Okay. Next comments?
David Farmer, University of Minnesota. Thank you. Well done. I eagerly await the additional features.
Thank you, David. Next.
Owen DeLong, Farsight Security, ARIN AC. Why do templates and the ARIN online have to be mutually exclusive?
Is the question?
That one's mine. Okay, so the template system is unmaintainable, as was described in the IRR roadmap that was discussed with the community. And so we have a code base that literally is coming now on 10 years old. Actually, it might be more than that, more than 10 years old. So we need to create something with a modern engine behind it. The new IRR is using IRR D4, which is a great platform to use. We need to configure that, though, so we've built an interface to ARIN Online. As for the template system, if there's enough demand, we can rebuild an email template system. But most people have moved on to other things, RESTful interfaces and APIs. So it's really up to the community on what sort of interface you want to the IRR. We've heard a lot of demand for a API. We haven't heard a lot of demand for a for an email template driven system. But if that's what the community wants, then that will also get added to the development queue.
So maybe I'll just add a bit, John, just to add as well, and this is just a more general, is that, you know, from a strategic standpoint, we've certainly as a board given direction that ARIN has to be very judicious with its resources. You know, it is still relatively a small organization and has a wide range of services it has to cover. So where there are services that are in high demand, as John says, you're happy to employ it. And at the same time, if other parties want to make use of the API and develop email template engines and such, that's something that they are free and open to do. And in fact, happy to, they're happy to even note it. I'm sure we are happy to encourage that kind of work. Okay, the queue's being closed. Let's go with our last one.
Last question from Ken Beatty. Is an org registration services agreement from 2012 still valid for IRR, or do we need to update it?
John, Corinne?
It's valid. As long as you're under any RSA or LRSA, then you receive access to the new IRR services.
Yeah, just a quick note on that. The only time we would ask you to update that would be if you came in to get new resources and you were at least 2 versions of the RSA back. Then you would be asked to update and sign a new RSA.